Hey there, welcome to the Leadership Snapshot Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Andreas. My guests are everyday leaders, and in each episode, we discuss leadership experiences, lessons, and we look behind the scenes to inspire your leadership growth so that you can make an impact. So stick around. We have a lot of people to talk to. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, my guest is Candace Duff, and I'm super excited to have her on my podcast because she's a coach, an author, and an entrepreneur. And on her website, she has an and more. Part of her and more is actually she's an attorney and just a wonderful person. But I want to read you something that she has on her website because I think it really does encapsulate who Candace is. It says, I'm a person. I'm a happy divorcee, a super auntie, a big sister, a daughter, a lover, a friend, and a woman who loves action movies, dark chocolates, thrillers, and romantic suspense novels, music festivals, dance, travel, writers' conferences, and spending time with my family. Now, if that doesn't describe someone who is full of life, I don't know what would. So welcome to the show, Candace.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So with all these things that you have listed, what is the thing that's really you're passionate about right now and you're like working like crazy on?
Well, right now I'm leading a challenge. It's called the 21-Day Book Bootcamp Challenge. And I am leading 17 ladies through writing their books. And it is the most exciting thing I think I've ever done, which is kind of crazy. But working with these women and helping them bring their books to life is really making me figure out what my calling is, like what I'm supposed to be doing. It feels right. I'm just having a great time doing it.
So I have this burning question that it bubbles up for me every time we talk is, how did you go from being an attorney to being an author of fiction? Because it seems like those are really so far two ends of the spectrum.
Yes. I've always wanted to write. Ever since I was 13 years old, I wrote poetry and song lyrics that people will never hear. They're straight out of the 80s. And I tried to write a science fiction novel based on Star Wars back then. Had a princess, I had a hero, the whole bit. And I've always loved to read. I've always been a voracious reader. Like I read every book in my parents' bookcase. And actually some of those books were quite inappropriate. But anyway, which might explain some things. But yeah, I've always been a voracious reader, but most writers are. And so I've always loved to write. But my parents believed in education and in becoming a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief, right? I mean, they weren't politically correct, but you had to fit within certain professions, right? You had to make a living, and they saw education as a way out of, poverty, a way out to stay one step ahead of the ghetto, or wherever the case may be. And so they really stressed education. I decided to become a lawyer. That's the route that I decided to take. But there are a lot of lawyers who want to write fiction. There are a lot of lawyers who, want to do something else and have a creative side. And so I'm not that unusual. I'm just unusual in the sense that I actually acted on it. So when I joined my firm, I went straight out of law school and I joined a large firm. It was in the top, it was one of those top tier firms, international. When I started, we had 120 lawyers. When I left, I had 1,000 partners. And we were in other countries, including in 26 different states. And so I, stayed there for the first, 1992 to 2014, 22 years of my practice. And for the first 15 years of my practice, I kicked my dream of being a published novelist to the curb because I didn't have time. First, I was working like a maniac to make partner. Then when I made partner in 2001, I was working like a maniac to figure that out, because making partner was starting all over again in a different tier and a different level of my career. And so I would go to the Maui Writers Conference every year. I think I went there 7 years in a row. It was ridiculous. It was fantastic. But and I would take courses and I would take seminars and I would learn how to write books and I'd hang out with writers and get intellectual stimulation that I didn't necessarily get in law. Because, and that artistic stimulation as well. But I never bothered to try to write my books because I didn't have time when you're working and billing as many hours as I was. And then something happened. In 2007, 2008, the real estate market crashed. And I was a commercial trial attorney, but I'm board certified still in construction law in Florida. And I represented developers. So I had a senior partner, and he and I represented developers. And we represented them for years, big condo developers. And all of a sudden, developers couldn't pay their bills anymore, right? Because the market had crashed. And I had to reinvent my practice. And I said to myself, as long as I'm reinventing my practice, I'm going to go ahead and reinvent myself, right? I'm going to go ahead and stop kicking my dream to the curb, and I'm going to write my books. So I joined NaNoWriMo, which I can tell you about, for the first time in 2007. And that got me started on this path.
What in the heck is NaNoWriMo? Because I don't know that anybody other than probably writers would know what that is. So tell us what that is.
Okay. It's National Novel Writing Month. And basically, maniacs from all over the globe, including myself, sign up on the website, nanowrimo.org, every year in November. And we vow to write a 50,000 word book, 50,000 word book from November 1st to November 30th of every year. 50,000 words is about 175 pages. So that's like a full-length book by any standards. And we vow to write a full-length book in 30 days. So we sign up. And then they have, different areas vary, but they have what they call municipal liaisons. And what these people do is they lead writing sprints, and they lead, get-togethers in cafes and other venues across the country. Basically, I signed up on NaNoWriMo for the first time in 2007, and I wrote what later became my first published novel, Just Dreams. And I wrote the first draft of that back in 2007. I had tried starting writing books before then, but I never could make much headway because I never had enough time, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, right? When I did NaNoWriMo for the first time in 2007, I actually got through a first draft. I actually finished the first draft of Just Dreams, and I finished it in 30 days. And when I figured out that I could finish the first draft of a novel in 30 days, I went crazy. I became obsessed with figuring out how to write books even faster, how to make the process even easier. Instead of just going to writing seminars about how to put more sexual tension in a scene or more romance in a romance novel or how to pick up the pacing, I started going to seminars about how to write fast, about how to outline and structure your novels, about how to, make it an easier process. And I learned all about that. What I learned became the basis of the framework that I actually teach today, which has 3 parts. And that's preparation, technique, and ability. I call it my PTA framework. And that framework allows me to whip out first drafts of books in as little as 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it's the framework that I teach in my courses.
That's awesome. So how often do you do these courses?
Okay, so I have a few courses. So I have a challenge that I've been running every other month. I did it for the first time here in April. So I'm ending that challenge now. That's going to end on the 21st. It's a 21-day challenge. And I'm doing it again in June. That'll be from June 1st to June 21st. So I have the challenge, and I just started running the challenges. But I also have my 10-day book bootcamp course. And that's the course where I teach how to write your book, the first draft of your book in 2 weeks.
Wow. That is fantastic. I love all about that. So you made a comment earlier about reinventing yourself. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
A lot of lawyers know that sometimes you end up in a place where you have to reinvent your practice, right? Where whatever you were doing before, there's a change in the law or there's a change in the market or whatever the case may be. And reinventing yourself is not only confined to the law, right? It could be any profession you're in. It could be any decision you make to pivot and go in a new direction. I basically reinvented myself into being an entrepreneur. I reinvented myself into becoming an author. So I started out on a straight and narrow path, did everything a good girl is supposed to do. Went to college, went to law school. Not only that, Ivy League colleges and law schools, graduated, went into a firm, and I was institutionalized the entire way. I was never either out of my house, out of the dorm, out of the college, out of the law school, or out of the large firm. I was always in a structure. And it wasn't until 2014 when I decided to break out on my own that I actually left that structure. And that's the second time I reinvented myself. Because I went from being in a secure law firm where I got a paycheck every, so often, to becoming a business owner to becoming an entrepreneur, to becoming a full-time author. So that was new and different. And I struggle, and I still do struggle sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about the struggle, because I think a lot of people, I've been actually had this conversation a couple of times and it still intrigues me. So I keep poking at it from different angles, is that people don't realize that you still struggle. Even when you're successful, you still have to work through things, and you always look out and you say, oh, they have it so easy. And you don't understand the internal stuff that's going on. So I'm glad that you mentioned that you even still struggle.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some people define entrepreneurship that way, right? I mean, once you reach a certain level, it's always going from one issue to the other and struggling through, one level to the other. So if you're a solopreneur, you're struggling, trying to do everything yourself, right? And trying to master like how to make money and how to have the right offer and how to do, the right things to basically build your business. And then when you get to a certain point, you can't do it by yourself. So then you struggle to how to bring on people to help you, and how to scale your business, and how to, and all that kind of stuff. And then once you do that, you have an entirely new set of issues to deal with. So it's usually going from one set of issues to the other, depending upon where you are.
One of the questions, Candace, that I ask every single person that's come on my podcast so far is, what has been the biggest leadership lesson that you had to learn?
I guess the biggest leadership lesson I had to learn, since I'm a party of one, is how to lead myself. How to lead myself, and then later how to lead others, right? And how to write their books. Because as the head of this challenge, I am actually leading 17 ladies in writing their books. I'm leading them through that process. So the first thing I had to master was how to get my own books done, and how to start my own self-publishing company, and how to become the person that can do that. And I still struggle, like a lot of entrepreneurs, with, shiny object syndrome and wanting to go off in different directions, or not having a clear path, or not knowing which product I'm going to put out, or whatever the case may be. I mean, we all struggle with that. And like all entrepreneurs and like all authors, I also struggle with mindset issues. I think the biggest reason why people don't write their book is fear. And that fear takes many forms, right? Fear that they're not an expert, fear that they're not a good writer, fear that people are going to judge them for whatever they put in their books. I mean, I have a pen name. I write under a pen name because I was, a trial attorney, a civil trial attorney in a big firm. And it's hard to be a kick-butt civil trial attorney as a woman and a card-carrying member of Romance Writers of America at the same time. You know what I mean?
I love that. I love that. I know your pen name is LJ Taylor.
Yes.
The two things I like about it, one, that you have a pen name. Second one is you can't tell if you're a male or female.
Exactly. But I picked that name because it was a play on my mother's maiden name.
Oh.
So her maiden name is J.L. Taylor, or Janice LeVay Taylor. And my father's name is Lewis, so I just switched it and made it LJ.
Very cool. I like how that came around. Tell me a little bit more about this process of balancing being a kick-butt attorney and a romance novelist who's published.
Well, it was a balance, and I had some weird ideas about it at first. Like at first, I kind of hid the fact that I was a published novelist, a romance writer, because I worried that my clients would think that I was splitting my focus, or that I wasn't really serious about being a lawyer or about doing their work because I was dabbling in these other areas. Not realizing, and it's funny because I actually had to speak to it. I spoke to a coach about it. I went to a conference, and they had business coaches there that you can consult with, for 15, 20 minutes. And I asked one of them, I said, is it a problem? Do you think it'd be a perception issue for my clients to know that I'm a romance writer, or is it something I should, bring forward? And they were like, no, it makes you interesting. It makes you well-rounded. It differentiates you from your peers, and your fiction writing skills are going to, translate over into your brief writing, which I always joke about how much fiction goes into brief writing, but that's a whole other issue. It really shouldn't go into that much, but the storytelling skills to translate, and I had to learn that. Like, I didn't have to hide the fact that I was a romance novelist. It was okay.
The other piece that I always love to know is what advice do you have for somebody, either, and I'll leave it up to you. I'll let you just pick. What advice do you have for somebody that you want to share? Because you have so many facets that I don't want to just pinpoint it. I want to let you answer it how you want to answer it.
I would say the best advice that I could give somebody is to push through the fear. Do it afraid, do it terrified, but just do it. If you have a dream that's burning inside you and you are dying to do something, whether that's start your own business, whether that's write your own book, whether that's, whatever it may be, do it, because we're here once, as far as I know. And, don't allow fear to hold you back from following your dreams. You'll regret that if you do.
That is amazing advice, Candace. Thank you for being on my show and talking to my guests. Now, if everybody wants to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
The easiest place to get a hold of me is Candace at CandaceDuff.com. So that's CANDACE at CANDACEDUFF.com.
Awesome. Thanks for being on my show, Candace.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you subscribe so that way you can hear new podcasts that come out every week. Embrace your journey, and we'll talk to you next week.